whatever you call it, when you come to Fenton, Missouri, whether it's West Community Stadium or any of the precursor names, you know you're going to have a good time. The cornhole boards are out, and St. Louis FC has a fresh coat of paint on what's been an up and down season. Right now they look like a contender. On Wednesday Night Soccer, they welcome the #1 team in the East, New York Red Bulls 2. Hi everybody, Mike Watts, Devin Kerr on the call on a beautiful night outside downtown St. Louis. Dev, you think of the Eastern Conference standings, Red Bulls look like they're in a good position up top. St. Louis, though, they've got a lot of work left to do.
John Wolinak's boys, though, they've dropped games recently to the likes of Indy 11 and Pittsburgh Riverhounds. They do not want to give up any more points, especially on the road. As good as they have been this year, they want that #1 spot. Indy 11 hot on their heels. St. Louis FC, forget it. Winners of 4 in a row, and they've done it in some pretty good company. So let's figure out exactly how they're going to counteract what's going to be thrown at them tonight and the likes of Red Bull 2. John Wolinak has his boys very well organized, and it's all about the press. When it breaks down in the middle of the field, it's not always 100 miles an hour. They compose themselves first, take a look at their surroundings, and they confuse people. Oscar Jimenez, Rasmussen, and Jeff D have no clue which way to go here, and you cannot go back because Jorgensen's actually sitting between the two center backs. Great little step in the middle by Ben Mines, and off to the races. Bury this in the bottom corner. That is how efficient they are in the offensive side. So how do you break it down? Pittsburgh Riverhounds figured it out. They did it twice. This is the most recent one. You have to sit deep. Every runner is accounted for. Even if this ball comes back across the middle, the one little step and you're off to the races the other way. That's exactly what Red Bull did. This time, Pittsburgh Riverhounds counteracted. Nico Brett has a decision to make here. Does he play the 1-2? Does he step on it? That is the mistake by every other team. You put it down in the channel, give yourself some space to play with, and then you go the other direction in rapid transition. He makes him pay as he gets his ball back from Velarde. He puts it in the back of the net.
Devin, if there's a time to go streaking, most would argue this is the time.
Great numbers. Love the 4-match win streak. Love the goal differential. But we talked about the company that they've done it against. They took down Birmingham Legion, who are on a streak of their own, and home victories against Nashville and Ottawa Fury. All teams that at that point in time were sitting above them in the playoff race. Now it's time to continue that succession going forward. If they can get Red Bull 2 to drop 3 points on the road, they've got an opportunity to turn the corner versus some less formidable opponents to continue to move up the Eastern Conference.
Well, Red Bulls 2 have played so much better on the road. This is going to be some kind of test for the #1 team in the Eastern Conference. As Devin mentioned, teams hot on their tail. St. Louis up and down through the Open Cup, but they've won 4 in a row now. St. Louis, New York, Wednesday Night Soccer is next. Welcome back to Wednesday Night Soccer from West Community Stadium in Fenton. It is St. Louis FC in 9th in the East, taking on John Wallenick's New York Red Bulls 2. If you don't know the name, you probably should. It's been around for quite a while, especially in the New York, New Jersey area. Born in Staten Island, a phenomenal player at Fordham, onto the Metro Stars, was actually released to give room for Thierry Henry, and then an assistant into a management role. Let's look at the lineup that he puts out, Devin. We knew that a couple guys wouldn't be here. Nealis and Bezecourt now with the team there in Portland.
Not surprising for Wallenick. He's made a multitude of changes, 2 on the back line, 1 in the middle, 1 up top. Sebastianelli caused a lot of problems over the stretch of games that they've had recently, and St. Louis FC saw that as well. The right side really struggled for St. Louis FC. Keep an eye on Jared Stroud. He'll be attacking that. St. Louis FC, Anthony Pulis, 2 changes. Kenan Fewa on the back line. Oscar Umar comes into the infield as Guy Bend will take a seat. Really thought they did well compacting the middle of the field in that 2-0 loss to Red Bull 2. But the outside wings have to be better in transition.
All right, well, this one feels big, doesn't it? It feels like something you might see in the playoffs in about a month's time. Only 4 more weeks of the USL Championship before the USL Championship playoffs begin. Whistle blows, Wednesday Night Soccer underway for Red Bulls 2. Can they maintain first in the East? Can St. Louis inch that much closer to clinching another playoff position? Fenton, Missouri, the site in West Community Stadium with Devin Kerr, the former German pro. Mike Watts on hand. You know, Devin, at this point, I think I came away feeling like New York has been overlooked for the entirety of the year for a team that's been in first place now for over a month.
The talking points around the Eastern Conference of the USL Championship. Your eyes probably jump to teams like Indy 11, maybe, and respectfully, a slumping Tampa Bay Rowdies, if we can call it that, still sitting in a top 4 position. Even the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, but sitting in the #1 spot. Still Red Bull 2, and everything they've been able to accomplish over the course of this year. Much work to be done, though, and one of the most impressive things about them is rotate 2, rotate 3, rotate 7 in and out of their lineup sometimes, but the methodology is always in place. Next man up, everybody knows exactly what the responsibility is, whether it's going forward or tracking back. A bit of the telestration at the top of the broadcast showcase that.
Gomez drove it away. And Rito makes his run. Rito squaring it, comes colliding away from Elney. Speaking of overlooked and underrated, great telestration, buddy.
Oh, look at that.
I'll say this, the Red Bulls tactics, everyone in theory knows what they are. I think in practice it's much harder to break down than people give it credit for. Obviously the results at the MLS and the USL Championship level have made that quite clear over the last few years.
You hang out with us for a little bit longer and we'll dive deeper into that area. There's so many variables to account for, and that's one of the major issues why teams do struggle with it. We talked about the quick transition for the Riverhounds and their ability to stretch down into the channel. That's a focal point that a lot of teams don't take advantage of. They second guess themselves and go the other way, but there are multiple angles to really attack this thing.
Kept alive, and Dakers with a blast. It comes off of Scarlett, who's clearly still hampered. Cicerone to the back post, sliding it in! What a start for St. Louis! Tyler Blackwood. His dream beginning with his new club just keeps getting better.
Everything is about Tyler Blackwood's finish on the back post, but you cannot understate Cicerone's ability to put this on a silver platter. We said there's multiple angles that you can go after Red Bull 2. Loved their play right down the middle. Lewis Hilton did a good job regaining composure, and Cicerone pulls this back across his body. Everybody thinks it's going to the left foot. Rito gets it wrong. Cicerone, just a quick pace ball to the back post. Evan Laurel cannot shift over fast enough, and Tyler Blackwood just sells his body out, full stretch to put it in the back of the net.
Absolutely incredible how Blackwood has just continued to develop here in St. Louis. A third-minute goal for Blackwood, is 4th with St. Louis, is 5th when you include his time with Sacramento. Dev, those numbers are outstanding. This is only his 7th game.
You have to realize that that's his 4th goal in the last 4 games as well. He bagged the 2 goals on the road against Birmingham Legion last Friday. And then one of the ones that, to be honest, really got this whole thing going, the 1-0 victory at the death of it against Ottawa.
Greg, top of the 6, a touch from Blackwood, not any further, kept by Hilton. How about St. Louis coming out firing here at the outset?
Lewis Hilton knows he got this one wrong as he was trying to come up over the top of the ball, put a bit of English on it and go after Evan Loro. Tyler Blackwood active once again in behind the back line, and frazzled is a word that you can easily use for Red Bull 2 right now. Well done by Evan Loro. He initially wanted to go quick, just calm things down. Opening 5 minutes, you've gone down. More than enough time to work your way back here. Just have a conversation with the boys in front of you and get back to what you're best at.
Smoke still clearing from the still incoming Luligans off in the corner. And Greg trying to hold up play, fouled. There's no such thing as a insurmountable lead against Red Bulls 2, though. If you thought you'd watch a 3rd-minute goal and call it a night, you've probably made an error in judgment. We'll stay with St. Louis again.
And ask Bethlehem Steel about that. It was mid-July, July 10th, down 3-1 with about 10 minutes to go. They got 3 in the back of the net, win 4-3, and there has been a couple stoppages. Opening 6 minutes, this one on the far side of the field when see a quick little movement down in. Dakers making friends with Preston Kilwine, their center back, stepping up.
Is that what he's doing? Kilwine out of Florida Gulf Coast. I think that was, I always get confused. Lob City, Dunk City during that tremendous NCAA tournament men's basketball run, Florida Gulf Coast.
I just stick with the fact that they're still in the ASUN, and I go with that.
True enough. It's just so hard to imagine doing schoolwork at a school like that. We'll see what St. Louis comes up with off the restart. Fink was the target, and this is hammered from distance. Not particularly close from Oscar Umar. Man who scored just 2 goals in the last 3 years between Richmond and now St. Louis FC. Worth noting that New York this year, Devin, have 16 more goals than any other team in the Eastern Conference. Now you get to the West in Phoenix, that number is a little bit different. But in this superbly tightly wound defensive conference, they've been a head and shoulders above everybody else. Fink here.
Conversely, how about the defensive unit allowing 50% less goals? As you and I are currently talking, you can actually add 1 onto that one. Now they've given up 33, conceding opening few minutes to St. Louis FC, but plus 10 goal differential sounds decent. 74 goals in the back of the net sounds great, but when you concede 64, that's a cause for concern. And one of the issues that they really ran into was their road form in 2018. A team that at home put 4 or 5 easy in the back of the net on you. You go on the road and they would just as easily concede that many. And those struggles few and far between in this 2019 campaign. John Wolinak's squad has been much more consistent in their play away from home. And the results obviously show it. You just wonder, with 7 out of their final 9 down the stretch on the road, can they continue this glorious run of form we've seen over the course of the season and find themselves still in the talking point in one of the top 4 positions?
Jorgensen gave chase. And a throw for Rito, the 23-year-old Venezuelan. On the move, it's Zayats. We actually checked with multiple people to confirm the pronunciation of number 51 for the Red Bulls. There have been a few issues in years past with names that don't quite look as they sound. And years later, you figure out you didn't quite have it right to begin with. wheel is probably one that comes to mind from Red Bull fans. There's an old story that his grandmother would go up to the press box at college games and make sure the name was right.
Well done, Grams. My grandmother was notoriously known for.
It's Kerr.
It's one of the difficult ones, right? I actually had very fortunate that there's some pretty decent tenure in my family's bloodline. My great-grandmother, when I was in high school, 102 years old, helping run the concession stand. I can remember visiting my brother. I was still a middle school player. We both went to the same high school, and they had an alumni game. Great-grandmother was there. At this point in time, she's 97, 96, somewhere in that area. And
young.
Took her across the street. Said, bagel and cream cheese. Had never heard of it. Said, I don't want that. I said, Graham, why don't you want to try bagel and cream cheese? You might like it. Her response, what if I don't want to like it? That was a little bit humbling, and kind of lived her life by that. But you asked her about everything. It was hot tea and Vicks. That pretty much saved everything.
Okay.
Here I am.
And they still called you Devon. St. Louis looking to go a bit direct in this effort. And Zayats knocks it ahead. His name no longer a mystery. Pressure arriving, and it is speared out. Both Elney and Jorgensen were making the run. Corner for Red Bulls 2. Luba from distance, nothing there. Well, St. Louis wants to run, and Blackwood with sprinter's pace, finding his way through Luba, slides in. Well done by the Fordham University alum. Stroud. Breakout season for Jared Stroud. 13 goals, 9 assists. Away from what in years past had been an elusive double-double. It's become more commonplace. That of Dakers. Kavita's best work. Cicerone, who had that dynamite service on the opening goal in the 3rd minute. Kofi. Lemma. Lemma's transversed the field, gets the cross away, and the contact won't elicit a whistle. This is Elvis Osmanovic's game. Referee tonight. Select is the official ball supplier, the USL Championship, and many of the finest leagues in the world. Since 1947, Select has been the leader in soccer ball quality and innovation. For the latest Select products, special offers, visit selectsportamerica.com.
One of the things to address almost immediately, opening 15 minutes coming up here by St. Louis FC and Red Bull 2. Great job by Tyler Blackwood, very active up top, but we referenced how it's a next man up, how Wolyniec can make so many changes on the field, but everybody knows their role. That was a good representation about 2 minutes ago where Janos Luba had rotated all the way over. Quick transition by St. Louis on the throw-in, something that Anthony Pulis, when it comes to restarts, really takes pride on. We'll address that later. Wolyniec looking for some wings.
Boy, was that on brand.
Impressive there by John Wolyniec, and not so much the orange flavor. We can talk about that later, but Janos rotating all the way over to the right back position, makes the tackle, and then as they start to go the other direction, he's making the run on the far side, down on the left. So they understand that it's not just one touch. they have to immediately start to get up and then push the other way if they want this format to be successful.
Luba brought down by Kadeem Dakers, and he's writhing in pain.
Dakers just tracking in behind here, and you can see that just right arm reaching out a little bit. Ankle gets caught underneath as Kadeem Dakers was getting ready to open up that long stride of his. That'll be a fun matchup all night long. Last time out, Nesta Cashier, Colin Fernandez, and Paris G on the left side really struggled with everything that was being thrown at them. Sebastian Elney was part of that group.
Comes back to Rito. Decide by Camden Fayewo. Colfi dispossessed. And it gets by Blackwood. This will run all the way back to Loro.
Just keep an eye here on the shape of St. Louis FC. All the green shirts in the middle of the field need Kofi and Lema Zayats to be quite active tonight. Already you can see they're dropping just a bit deeper, and that doesn't mean they're setting up to be a defensive unit all night long, but they are so consistent in their shape. Everybody rotating side to side. Good look at the movement left to right, but even now, solid lines right across the back line in the middle. Very difficult for Red Bull 2 to break down.
Flicked ahead to Elney. Maybe a chance to strike, but Kavita arrives. Elney and Jorgensen available, cross lifted, Kavita there again. Cleared further now. Spinning around Elney, came off of Camden Fayewo. Cicerone now the defense. Well, Devin, you look right now, it almost does look like five in the back the way Cicerone has dropped all the way in. And Hilton's moved over to that side and shifted a little bit as well, but how does that fit within the way you beat Red Bull? This could have flipped out.
No different than other rotations we've seen out of other squads, and Anthony Pulis' squad, they're impressive because, and we talked about this before, your back four is always going to be your back four. You'll get movement by one, but he likes to push two. Going forward, defensively, they're always going to drop, and they get help because Lewis Hilton, Oscar Umar will rotate over. Even your outside midfielders will step up, and they'll provide that extension, an outside arm, if you will, of this defensive unit, so that when you get an overlapping run of Rito or even Elney getting help out of the midfield from the likes of Kofi or Lema coming over, you have that extra runner to help out. The question is when you add a third into the mix, another one coming off the back line for Red Bull 2, or someone else stepping out of the middle, where does the confusion lie? A lot of times you'll see guys not communicate appropriately because they understand when a one-on-one situation where they're at, even a secondary runner coming in. But Red Bull 2 do such a good job of not just overloading one side, but space in general, and that's where they start to confuse you.
Corner for Red Bulls 2. Luba back to the opposite corner, and Lema was offside. Lema, second round pick of FC Dallas. They thought about him as a homegrown. Maybe thought he wasn't quite the Red Bull type. Ultimately, they're quick to snap him up when FC Dallas didn't sign him, and well, they're quite pleased with his progression this year. They feel like he has fit in quite well.
If he continues this path, he will start getting looks from MLS and New York Red Bull. He is coming along that quickly, and what's more impressive about him is not just his ability in the middle of the field, but it's the vision, like you're seeing right now. Great ball down in against Sam Fink, but he can also drop and play that 6 or 8 pivot type role. So he can be that defensive shape on the back line, but also going forward, the extension of the arm in the middle to help out guys like Sebastian Elney and the boys up top.
The touch by Rito, a bit heavy. Whipped across by Zayats. Fink has to drive it away. Luba. Falling down was Boehner. Squared up, it got by Jorgensen. Greg. I didn't quite see that run there, Dev.
There comes the press. This is where you get yourself into trouble. You don't play it, and now you've worked yourself 40 yards back. What's the response from it? That's got to be a conversation from Anthony Pulis on the sideline, telling his big striker up top, yes, we like you in hold-up play, but when the overlapping run starts to develop, you got to play it quickly. That's exactly where the Riverhounds were successful and why they were able to take Red Bull 2 down twice this year.
I hear that scream for the second ball. So significant to keep the Red Bulls out of transition. Off the head of Greg. Kofi. And the pressure midfield, a foul from Hilton.
It's unfortunate here by Lewis Hilton. I really like the quick step by the midfielder. This is something that St. Louis FC is so good at as well, where they will sit deep and be very patient, but also spring into attack in the other direction with their defensive shape. They'll get 2-3 guys giving you a taste of your own medicine when it comes to the Baby Bulls. That intermittent press where you kind of just turn your head a little bit and say, that's not what I've seen over the past 5-6 minutes. Unfortunately, Lewis Hilton just getting in himself a little bit of trouble in front of the referee.
Lemma knocks it wide. There's room to work with here. The early ball for Elney comes off of Camden Fayewo. And another Red Bull corner. They haven't really done much at all with this yet. It's Lemma who will take it.
He hits a lot of these set pieces. Just keep an eye on the trickery that can be employed. Talk to St. Louis FC and what their set pieces are about. Now they've got to take shape defensively. You will see a quick run on the bottom to the near post sometimes like this.
And it's lobbed over the goal line and out. With just weeks remaining, pressure is on. Tune into ESPN3 October the 2nd. We've got El Paso looking to secure one of the final playoff spots against Fresno FC, who have its sights set on hosting multiple playoff games. They can guarantee that with the number 2 seed behind Phoenix. Locomotive FC and the Foxes, October the 2nd. Wednesday night soccer on ESPN3. For those just joining us, Tyler Blackwood from Russell Cicerone in the 3rd minute. Gorgeous goal. Gives St. Louis the lead in a game that you wouldn't say they need. But if you ask Anthony Pulis, he feels like maybe 4 wins, another 12 points guarantee you a spot in the playoffs at this point.
You and I were going back through years past, and outside of 2016, and we're also speculating here, assuming that the games in hand that were no longer played, 30, 32, that you actually won those matches. Outside of 2016, that number was good enough. If they get to 53 every other year, they would have made it into the playoffs. You just sort of wonder, what does the rest of this look like? Birmingham Legion were on a tear of their own. They've hit a skid. Ottawa Fury seems to basically put on all the brakes and is rapidly dropping down the Eastern Conference. North Carolina FC right there as well. The only one in the vicinity of St. Louis FC that has not slowed down is the back-to-back reigning champs, Lou City.
Which, as you've noted, is par for the course in these late season months.
They're obnoxious. It really is.
Did you say 4 losses in the last 5 years?
Since the start of 2016, so we're in the 4th year. August, September, October. Basically, when you got to put it to the metal and make a run at this, they are 29, 4, and 14.
No trouble there. Laurel come off his line. Yeah, that is pretty obnoxious.
4 losses in 47 matches, and just kind of everybody else looking around going, feel free to slow down, boys.
That's sort of the idea of what St. Louis is up against. It looks like 6 is out of their reach. Ball lifted toward Elney and cracked off of a defender. Still alive here for Kofi and Red Bull 2. For Red Bulls 2, situation's all right. You're in first place. Just take care of business. You've already guaranteed yourself a playoff position. Now you're just trying to get as many home games as you can. Rito. Kept in play by Lemma. And contact just outside the penalty area. Yellow card to Red Bulls. Well, they're arguing for a bit of simulation. Well, Stroud is not a happy man, is he?
He's made his way all the way to the near touchline in front of the linesman. Lemma doing a good job just playing one in, hoping that he can get a touch on it. He goes to ground. The issue was also how he reacts, because he didn't like the referee no call, immediately stood up, had a conversation, and our referee sets a precedent here saying that I'm not going to deal with that, and you just kind of wonder at what point in time, pull back the reins a little bit here and get away from the ref. Jorgensen having a conversation, Lemma's behind him as well, and just didn't like the fact that maybe he went to ground a bit too easily.
I think if you're making an argument there, I struggle to call that a dive because there was contact in that play. So either you let it go or it goes the other way, I would have thought.
The only way that this card occurs is what is said. It's not the fact that he went to ground. It's, hey, come on, where's the call? Something along those lines, especially when it's right in front of the assistant referee on the near touchline. So you've got 2 guys that's got a pretty good look of what went down in or around the box. By just him going ground, that's not enough to brandish a card.
Stands have filled in quite nicely here at West Community Stadium. This will roll away from Luba. Luba is the 3rd first-round draft pick out of Fordham by New York Red Bulls in the franchise's history. Ryan Mara is the backup goalkeeper. And John Walenik is now the manager of the side. Luba picked 22nd in the MLS Super Draft. Tack on here through Rito. Rito putting on the moves. Camden Faywell got enough of that to allow Gomez through.
And a quick transition in full force again by Rito on the right side, and just get the center back turned around a little bit. You make the move quicker. He's not able to transition over as he gets help on the weak side. Well done by the recovery on the defensive shape of St. Louis FC. And this is what you have to do. Close things down on one end, quick reprieve on the other. Give yourself some breathing room.
Cicerone, Greg.
Notice again the long stretch. Quick little ball to the top of the 18. Kyle Gregg does everything right here except put it on frame. Lovely first touch. And as he comes across, it just puts a bit too much spin on it. A little bit more power, and that can tuck itself inside the far post of Evan Laurel.
And think about Red Bulls and their history of getting great players out of this USL Championship side. While some of them have ultimately moved on, it's thrown back to Loro. They've done a phenomenal job, probably more so than any other team in the league, at taking players to the next level. I mean, we're talking guys making it the U.S. men's national team. And Devin, you and I were both so interested in hearing about John Walenik's relationship with Chris Armas, and before that, Jesse Marsh. And even when they first started talking about the program with Ollie Curtis and And with Mike Petke, it really is fascinating to think about the way they view philosophically Red Bull 2.
Their ability to jump, and I say that nicely because you're making a transition from manager to manager, retain the values that you want, and then pile on positive attributes going forward. That's really difficult to do. Anytime you make a managerial change, you're going to have setbacks. They really haven't dealt with that.
No.
And they haven't dealt with it within their MLS club. And of course, the USL Championship team that John Wolyniec has been the main talisman the entire time. Talking about how they wanted to actually come in a year before they initially did. Things didn't work out that way. But he's been the constant presence there the entire time. And a guy who gets so many looks, whether it's 16-year-old academy players, you've got guys coming out of college, players that are on MLS contracts with New York Red Bull, getting an opportunity on short-term loan, however long that may be, to come in. A lot of disruption that have caused other organizations in similar situations a lot of issues. That hasn't been the case for Red Bull 2.
Blackwood chips this through, and Scarlett plays back to Loro. Scarlett in possession here. I mean, it's a team that is consistently among the most competitive, but they talked ultimately about realizing the potential that they saw in this team. The ebb and flow of American soccer in the global ecosystem, probably the next step is to be selling leagues. And Red Bull 2 and New York Red Bulls, to an extent, have found ways to find good players in a manageable way moving forward. As this will skim out, corner coming. And you think as Red Bulls 2 prepare to take a corner here in the 31st minute. About this year, first in the USL Championship in the Eastern Conference. Flag was up there. Looked like the ball had moved out of the arc. We'll try it again. Service whipped in near post, back heel up. And played right into the hands of Gomez with Jorgensen in the 6-yard box.
We just showed you the stat that that's their 5th corner of the night. Notice every single one has been a different look. They've knocked one to the back post. There's been the direct around the penalty mark. This one goes near post, but also a bit of trickery right to the top of the 18. They always keep you second guessing. Something to keep in mind if you're Sam Fink and Manuel Cavita on the back line. I'm sure everybody's marked up, whether it be zone or man-to-man.
So they'll attend to that injury, and let's go a step further. 2016 USL Championship final winning side, New York Red Bulls 2, had some great players, but notably a very young Tyler Adams and a very unknown Aaron Long. And look at them now. They've combined for 23 caps with the U.S. men's national team.
Those boys are regularly trying to push their way into the starting 11. Of course, international duty within their actual respective clubs combined with country kind of hinders that at certain points in time. But the fact that they've come this far in such a short amount of time, and not just these two, by the way, this is the main talking point. Will you run down that roster? That wasn't even fair.
Is this the guy who's next? I mean, $2.5 million reported transfer fee. He was disappointed, to be frank. I think in John Wolyniec's mind, he felt that Jorgensen thought that he would make a bigger impact at a different level sooner, but that he's come around quite a bit. He's scoring at quite the rate here.
The Denmark native coming out of Odense Bold Club, you're hoping that it is. There's talk that he's the heir apparent to Bradley Wright Phillips. Can he make that jump? You have to remember, still a teenager, so there's plenty of time for him to continue to develop, but with a price tag on you like that, you hope that you can not only produce within USL Championship, but given your opportunities from the MLS club, got to take full advantage of it. And just to track back, combine what you see out of Jorgensen with they want to be a selling club. That's something that you and I had the opportunity to experience firsthand last year when we were a part of the ICC Futures, more specifically the academy for Bayern Munich, and they talked about how their frustration lied within all of the purchasing they were doing outside of their club. They spent all this money at the youth level, and it wasn't coming up through the ranks, so they would have to go into the transfer market, spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and said, hey, let's get back to square one here. Let's retool the academy, build from the ground up. That's exactly what Red Bull has been able to do from top to bottom.
In the soccer hotbed of New Jersey and New York, a brilliant job of finding players. You know, you talk about heir apparents. Turns out this Barlow guy and this White guy are pretty good at bagging goals as well. Back to Scarlett, who people pegged as maybe the next man up not too long ago, but Sean Nealis has quickly grabbed the horns at that position for Red Bull 2.
How interesting that the 2-0 victory for New York Red Bull 2. Earlier on this season, it seems like just a short time ago, but go back to August 2nd. That was when St. Louis FC kind of kicked it into high gear. 8 matches since then, 4-2-2. But Red Bull 2, as we mentioned, really went after Paris G and Cashier on the left side, and they're doing the same thing. A lot of their offense running through. Rito and Elney on the right side don't have a lot of balance. You haven't seen a lot of movement out of Zayat's number 51 in the middle. Lemma and Kofi quite active, but I'd really like to see this movement start to procure itself over to the left side where you can now stretch out that back line from St. Louis FC. Let's put some balls into Jared Stroud or Janos in some overlapping runs. We've seen it a little bit, but basically just the start of their movement going forward. Then they stop and rotate it back to the right side. They become predictable in their actions going forward.
Throw for St. Louis. Camden Falo is having some heated words. Kofi allows it through. Loba. Zayats sending Luba all the way back. Well, St. Louis scored in the 3rd minute of play. Off and running. It's a team with 3 shutouts in their last 4 games, all wins. As they've gone back to basics, simplified the formula a bit, and look very much a team dangerous as the playoffs loom. Red Bulls 2, top of the East. This would be the top prize on the mantle for St. Louis in the regular season this year. Kofi. Rito. Came off of Umar. Kilwine. Stroud made himself available. Won by Kadeem Dakers. Talk about the big trophy, so to speak, for St. Louis among the regular season. And against Red Bull would certainly be that, but the U.S. Open Cup run they were on was something really spectacular as well this year. They and New Mexico United were the last 2 standing in the USL Championship and America's longest running cup competition. Approaching the byline, that ball did get away. Fink for the bleachers.
Both those squads recently getting back to their winning ways. Mexico United have rattled off 2 in a row. They've got a tough test on Friday night as they'll take on Reno 1868. St. Louis FC, we said 4 in a row, now out in front at home. This is a really difficult place to play. Remember, they've only dropped 1 match here this year.
Cross lifted, Cicerone further. Red Bull choose to recycle. Hilton nearly brought it away. Lemma. Contact as one player screaming at the top of his lungs. Settled by Loba, who scored some bangers in his college career. Outside back, a new phenomenon for him. Rito. Square right out to Cicerone. Here he goes. Sends Scarlett the wrong way. Greg slips it ahead. Cicerone versus Scarlett 2.0. Top of the 18, Hilton!
This is beautifully done by St. Louis FC. Again, if you can stretch Red Bull 2 quickly going the other direction, that will give you an opportunity to be successful. Still have to execute, but Cicerone, he's the one who initially starts this movement. Quick little ball down in, and the second one, the 1-2, is eerily similar to what you saw at the open of the show out of Pittsburgh Riverhounds when they were able to take down Red Bull 2. And just have the ability to pick your head up, settle things down, and catch the trailing run of Lewis Hilton at the top of the box. I understand the end product is lacking, but it's a great thought process by the home squad.
I mentioned a moment ago, and Red Bull are going to try and move quickly here. Most of the numbers during the Open Cup, they're going to be whistled back. 2 points a game before, half a point a game during the Open Cup, where they were playing essentially every 3 days with 14 or 15 field players. And back to about 1.5 points since.
Remember, if you put all those together, it was actually 1 win in 13 matches. That's even a more concerning one. And the fact that they're even still relevant gives you an idea of how quick of a start they got off to.
2 wins and a draw against 3 of the top teams in the Eastern Conference the first 3 weeks. They were off and running. Chris Lemma, free kick. This is right off the training ground, tic-tac-toe. Rito. Kofi. Zayats.
Look at all the space on the left side for New York Red Bull 2. Where they're getting themselves in trouble, though, is as they continue to force down this right. Just keep an eye on the midfield 3. Kofi has been consistently sitting deep. And we talked about Lemma rotating back over, but where is Zayats?
Rito against Camden Faywell. The defender next to me is applauding.
It's beautiful one-on-one stuff, and this would be easy to fall behind, understanding you don't necessarily have the exact amount of speed that's on the opposite side of the ball. But Camden Faywell does a good job playing the angles game, uses the big frame of his to push Rito over. And going back to the midfield 3 for John Wolinek's boys. Lemma's dropping in deep, and they're lacking the stretch up top in that triangle, so Zayats has to then become the attacking option, and more so that he has to rotate side to side. He's become stagnant in his movement, so when they do start to go back left, they've already got 2 sitting deep, and they don't have the ability to connect the dots in the middle of the field. That's why you have seen less movement out of the front 3. They also aren't going very direct. if you recognize that maybe the middle's not there for you, the option is then to push the ball up high. They just haven't given any of the boys up top to go after it.
Well, that was fantastic. Cicerone breaking through and overrun. Precisely what Kofi had to do. Slip back into the corner. You saw it coming up. News and notes and all kinds of goodies coming up at halftime here on Wednesday Night Soccer. As this will roll out and be a goal kick for St. Louis. Tevin, you and I both in talking with Tyler Tetzlaff, who is one of the better PR guys in the league, always so responsive and helpful. He was describing to us a little bit about the Water Boys initiative that Chris Long of the former St. Louis Rams had started. It's ultimately an effort to help those without clean water. They're doing an auction beginning in 4 days. It runs through October the 6th. And we love it when teams give back to the community they're in, and in partnering with Chris Long, St. Louis has stepped onto as big a stage as possible to try and do just that.
Some excellent warm-ups and pregame that they're going to then go out and give to the public and try and raise some money off of that, combined with some other efforts. And the mission, 1 million people, is the initiative that they're going after for clean water. I mean, it's real easy for us to sit here and think about, oh, where are our lives struggling? We have to put into perspective everything that's going on around the world, as Mike surveys my high pH water sitting next to me.
He has Icelandic natural spring water.
This is health purposes. I'm not a water snob.
No, you're not, but the pH level is between 8.5 and 9, which is basic, acidic. Contact, and, well, it's going the other way. St. Louis is frustrated, to say the least. Dakers shown a yellow card.
You just wonder for John Wolyniec and Anthony Pulis the conversation that's going to go on with the referee. Again, not second-guessing his actions, but we saw it early on down on the other end. This one goes in here. Again, there is contact here. Don't necessarily think it's simulation. If the referee is going that direction, that's fine. You set the precedent early on, and you've now followed suit. That needs to be conveyed to the managers, though, as well. So they're not on the sideline going, okay, what direction are we headed here?
2 more minutes of added time. Dakers keeping his feet this time. Dakers lofting it back. Cicerone tried to pirouette through the ball and bring it with him. Bounces down to Umar. Coming up at halftime again, Phoenix going for a perfect blackjack. Highlights and stats from around the league, and if you've missed expansion news today, you read The Athletic reported that the Des Moines market may be a future USL championship market. Exciting stuff there. And Landon Donovan and Warren Smith, Sacramento executive of their initial expansion team that won the USL championship final in 2014. They're going to launch USL Championship San Diego next year, 2020, so not 2 years away. They start in what, Devin? That's like 8 months.
We talk about this constantly, about my inability to necessarily put 1 and 1 together to make 2, so I'd appreciate it if you stay away from that.
Well, Devin, how about this? It's less than 8 months, by the way. Blackwood, the goal in the 3rd minute. Math not my strong point either.
Impressive by St. Louis FC in the first half. Really liked how they went out, got the early goal, but also sat back and showed that they would go in transition quickly as well. Wolyniec's got to find a way to get that midfield 3 on the same page. There is too much talent in the front three up top to bypass the entire center and go direct. You wonder if there's going to be a change early on. I'm making it if so. If not, 55, 60 minutes mark, go after it.
Blackwood loves it. St. Louis, team on a 4-game win streak. This is as good as they've looked in the league all season long. And today against the best team in the East. The early goal, physicality galore. We'll take a look at highlight stats from the first half when we return to Wednesday Night Soccer.
That includes sunglasses, koozies, and a free Supercuts haircut. Tonight's Supercuts Lucky Row is Section 6, Row K. Section 6, Row K, congratulations. You are the winners of the Supercuts Lucky Row. Supercuts, the official haircut partner of St. Louis FC. Remember to visit Supercuts for your next haircut.
Hey, game management.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the field Northwest High School Marching Band for a special halftime marching performance.
Gorgeous night in St. Louis and Fenton, Missouri, to be specific. 1-0 St. Louis FC at the half. The marching band is out on the field, believe it or not, and the Louligans are enjoying a moment of respite. Next week, big game in the Western Conference. El Paso looking to make one last stand against Fresno. And, well, last week was pretty good, too. Take a look.
Let's go with the left foot, Jamal Johnson.
What a goal! Perfectly placed.
With one touch to settle, and now it's finds the top of the net. Flag stays down, and Indy 11 has a one.
Ball struck towards the 18, headed on and headed home.
Inside, glancing header, and he caps it off with the goal of the night.
I think they want dangerous play call.
That one served in the back of the net. Fresno out of nowhere.
Milton serves it into the back post. It's off the woodwork and it's in.
That's in the back of the net. Another cross into the corner, and Hubbard does even better.
Moberg's gonna take a shot on goal with a cross and a fantastic save.
Good shot for Blackwood. Nice play by Van Oakland
To force him to give the ball up. Illich saved.
Second in the league in USL League One. He's got an opportunity for another. Curls and scores! Oh, Zaguro! Moshobani again. Back heel, Moshobani! He did it again!
Whips it in, finds the back post.
Oh, what a finish, Arturo Rodriguez. Through ball though, Demas the other way, Demas saved by Hara.
In the middle, still Jaden Nelson, his shot, it's saved again by Giuliano Chache.
Wide open. Fitzgerald covering the mark, still Rodriguez, and stopped by Fitzgerald.
Mike and Devin welcoming you back. The band is now leaving the field. If only it were that simple all those years ago. It's a 1-0 to St. Louis. As, well, forget leave the field. They're just continuing to march. Dev, let's take a look at news and notes from around the USL Championship. And for Phoenix, it's quite simple, 20 straight. So blackjack on Saturday, yay or nay?
It's hard to bet against them, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just feels like you want to say yes, but we know how that story has been told before. We'll say this. Really rough stretch of games coming up as all of them are going to be on the road. How about Red Bull 2 and Indy 11? They clinched as well as the Eastern Conference race heats up. You and I talk about it. For me, it's really the 8, 9, 10, 11 spot, how that's going to play out. Charleston Battery behind against Atlanta United 2. They're on the outside looking in. Western Conference, I have reached a point in time where I'm just going to say, I don't know. And let's just leave it at that, okay? The first 3 are in. Everybody else, figure it out on your own.
That's right. USL San Diego will start 2020. As we mentioned, at USL Pro Iowa is planning 2022. Their Twitter now active as they try and bring a USL Championship club to a city that's so well supported the Menace in League 2. Here are the Eastern Conference standings, Steph. By the way, Des Moines, East, West, I mean, like, you think St. Louis has had it rough the last few years. Red Bull's at the top, but, boy, there's a lot of competition there. You could argue anyone in the top 5 still has a real shot.
Ottawa Fury are really close to be back to their winning ways, and it just went full-time. A 91st-minute penalty by Wallfall has taken down the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Neil Collins' boys have had a rough past couple weeks. How about Bethlehem Steel? They've come from behind. They're moving their way up. For me, though, it's still Charleston Battery. I'm telling you, I don't see them getting in, but I would really like them to. Mike Anhauser and the Charleston Battery, the only team in the modern era to make the postseason every single year. Seems like a long time ago they won that championship.
Yeah, you see Birmingham there in 10th, and when you look at Wednesday Night Soccer's upcoming schedule, we'll see them on ESPN News. All this resurgence without Chandler Hoffman is really the shocking part. Hartford will get the spotlight as well. El Paso, Fresno, 2 teams in very different places in the West.
Doesn't hurt for Birmingham Legion. They've got a couple boys on loan from the MLS level trying to prove themselves. Regular repetitions are always nice. Mark Lowry's squad, I told you this, they are one of the most impressive teams from the back line, 65 yards up the field. But it's that final third that's been lacking. Got to find a way to get it done if they want to make the postseason.
Devin, do you recognize this song? Oh, they're done. Never mind. Xylophones are going to be away. Players will be back when we come back here on Wednesday Night Soccer.
St. Louis FC fans, please welcome to the field team representing St. Louis Scott Gallagher. St. Louis Scott Gallagher has been fielding teams within the community for over 30 years. The 2019-2020 season has officially kicked off, and we'd like to wish them all the best. Please give a round of applause to all of our players and teams.
Devin, have you seen those videos where it's like all these kids against 3 players?
Easter egg hunt.
Yeah. Do you think you could win?
Absolutely not.
But what if I was on your team?
Absolutely
not. It's 1-0 here at the break. St. Louis and New York will eventually clear the field off and get into the second half. Let's take a look at our first half highlights. And, well, first highlight's going to come pretty soon because St. Louis FC got off to the perfect start.
Everybody said, what was the press going to be like of New York Red Bull 2? Well, it got counteracted quite rapidly, and this beautiful ball whipped in by Russell Cicerone on the left-hand side is finished off by Tyler Black. But look where it starts, though, in the middle of the field. Yes, St. Louis turns it over, but they're not the ones to back down and immediately retreat. They go after everybody else. A little press of their own, 2-3-man game in the middle of the field. Well done by Kadeem Dakers to recover. They rotated back outside. Lewis Hilton, the guy who always seems to steer this team in the right direction, just ushers it over to Cicerone, who sticks it up top. Blackwood gets 4 goals in 4 games. These were 2 calls that, again, I'd really like to have a conversation with the managers, figure out what went on here. Early on, Jared Stroud coming over from the left all the way to the right. They call it simulation. He goes to ground. Yellow card. Kyle Gregg would get a look. Quick little rotation. Love the touch out in front of him, but he's got to stay up over the top of the ball. Leaning back away from his body, pushes it past the far post. And again, this is the quick transition when you're playing out of all those red jerseys running at you. Good decision making is what really gives you the opportunity to be successful. Cicerone, once again, he is the one who helps this team out. Good little ball into Kyle Gregg, plays off of him. The trailing run lacking by Lewis Hilton in terms of his finishing ability. Not something that you regularly hear out of the Englishman, but it's a good job by St. Louis FC to play out of the back and counteract what was being thrown at them.
That was a really nice artistic cutaway on the final highlight. I don't think we give enough credit. Here are the halftime stats. It's 1-0 to St. Louis. Red Bulls 2 offense has been largely anemic.
It's not impressive whatsoever, and it all goes back to Jorgensen, Sebastianelli, Jared Stroud. I mean, outside of the choppiness in play up top, what else have they done? And that's not a discredit towards their ability or what they're capable of. They just haven't had a lot of distribution to them. You've seen some overlapping runs by the outside backs. You've even seen Kilwine and Scarlett step up into the middle. What we haven't seen is a lot of movement on the left-hand side. Jared Stroud quite regularly coming over to the right. He's ball hunting. Frustration by him. I would like to see some movement out of the middle. Not necessarily sure Woliak's willing to pull the trigger just yet on a substitution, but I have not been impressed by Zayats in the middle of the field.
Let's take a look what's upcoming for St. Louis down the stretch. As they've got 6 to go, 3 at home. 3 of those teams are below the line. Memphis, Atlanta, probably not making the playoffs. Memphis, but still on the road, Dev. That's not easy.
Mathematically still there, but you know, an opportunity for St. Louis FC. This is the form we saw them at earlier this year. Mind you, 4 wins in a row. It's the best form of the season. Haven't done that all season long, regardless of how good their start was. But can they continue at 4th? How about Red Bull 2 and what they're going to have to take on? Lou City right around the corner. Are these guys going to see each other 3 times again this year? It's quite possible. Lou City, late resurgence. Red Bull 2 sitting atop the Eastern Conference. Only this time, we could be going away for Lou City. It won't be at the friendly confines of Slugger.
Well, they have met in multiple conference finals, including a couple of penalty shootouts over the last 3 years. And Tyler Blackwood and St. Louis trying to assure St. Louis at least a playoff game. For those who maybe don't understand the new playoff format, top 10 now make the playoff field. Top 6 don't play in the preliminary first round before you get into the conference quarterfinals. So think of an imaginary red line below 10, maybe a white or yellow line under 6th. 7 would play 10, 8 would play 9. Louisville looks like they're going to hold on to 7th. If St. Louis gets a few wins here, we're talking about a team that at least hosts in the first round before the quarterfinals.
Then based upon seeding, that's how it all plays out, who you then play next. And I mean, you would imagine there wouldn't be any upsets, but I mean, the way this season has gone, who knows?
Historically, home field advantage in the Western Conference means bupkis. It means everything in the East. It's fascinating if you're being honest. Number 1 seeds have gone down regularly in the West, and of course in the East, New York Red Bulls 2 put FC Cincinnati to the sword a year ago, the number 1 seed in the East. But Louisville, in their last 2 USL Championship final runs, did not have to go on the road a single time. The year before that, Red Bulls 2 did not have to go on the road. Year before that, Rochester did not have to go on the road. So there you go. Underway in the second half here on Wednesday Night Soccer. St. Louis leading since the 3rd minute of play. Red Bulls 2 looking to maintain position atop the East. And think about it for Red Bull. If they drop any points here, and Phoenix wins on the weekend, Dev, I believe that would seal up the regular season championship trophy between the two conferences for Phoenix Rising as well. So Red Bull 2 among the last that are flailing to try and keep up with Phoenix.
You do have Indy 11 right there as well, but the issue they'll run into is 7 games to go. That's a max 21 points. That can get you to 77.
Yep.
Phoenix currently sitting on 71, so there is a gray area for teams to work with. The problem is, the way things are going right now, it doesn't look like anybody's going to be dethroning Rising. Again, they got to go on the road this weekend to Fresno, so we'll see.
Set piece for St. Louis. They've been so good trying to take that out of the air on the volley. Dakers never got a shot. There's Matt Boehner. Almost feels like a lifer by now. First team All-USL going back to 2014 with Harrisburg. Flew into Cincinnati under John Harkes, that great expansion season, and was a top-notch outside back, and watched as his stock fell a bit over the last couple of years. Umar. Dakers. Run from Camden Fayewo flames out. This is Red Bull at their best. Running at the back line with Rito playing over to Jorgensen and cleared away by Fink. Gomez may have had his hands on it, but Stroud was hunting.
Enough credit is not going to be given to Sebastian Elney, who tracked all the way back to help out. That enabled Rito to have the space out in front of him. St. Louis FC just second guessing a bit there.
Jorgensen off the quick restart, and they'll do it again. Another corner. Red Bulls passed a dozen corners in this game.
Notice their center backs hadn't even made their way all the way up. Now you get a second chance with Kilwine, Jordan Scarlett. Watch the over rotation to the back post on this second ball whipped in.
Stroud trying to go to work. Good leading touch to give St. Louis a little room here on the outside. Cicerone waiting. Cicerone driving on Scarlett, whose slide was on point. Maybe this developed just a little too slowly at the end.
Got to win your one-on-one battles, and Jordan Scarlett does exactly that. But when you're Cicerone and you pull this back immediately, you've got to ask for this ball. Tyler Blackwood right at the top of the 18. Give it to me now. Instead, he pauses. There's also the back post run by Kadeem Dakers, which is the better look. That quick transition has to be 1-2 touches. The moment that you take a bit longer, that's when Red Bull come back and bite you.
St. Louis FC takes so much pride on set pieces. Ball whipped back to Blackwood and steered out. Another corner. Devin, they spend a lot of time on this.
Anthony Hill is telling us how much pride he takes in it, how maybe in the past, some of his other squads, they went too deep. That's not the case with St. Louis FC. And just keep an eye on the two big guys, Fanuel Kavita, Sam Fink, number 3, number 4. They're going to give you a lot of different looks, but primarily they'll sit in the middle and then they branch off of each other. The problem is there's no pattern of exactly how it's going to play out, and that difficulty lies on the defensive shape for Red Bull 2 to mark them out of this game.
Corner to the back post over Blackwood. With the center back forward, whipped over the top. Will it find Camden Fayewo? No. And a quick dynamic diagonal. Jorgensen off to his right. And a shimmy inside and a curling effort. It goes begging from Stroud. You know, Devin, I think everyone points to Anthony Pulis and say, hey, that's Tony Pulis' son. You know, Premier League manager, giant name, giant sort of persona. And he did sort of say, yeah, he's one of the muses I look at in terms of, I don't think he used the word muse, in terms of how he does set pieces, how he coaches on the touchline.
To give you an idea of how deep this guy's talent runs and the respect that he has within the coaching community, earlier on this year, he was actually back across the pond to renew his UEFA A license overseas. I had a friend that was involved in that, getting his license for the first time. He sat in front of about 150 coaches, put on a session for every single one of them. And a lot of guys came out of that going, wow, they had a new kind of sense of mentality of to what Anthony Pulis was capable of. And it wasn't just from set piece situation. It wasn't just the defensive unit. He gave them so many new looks to think about that they weren't accustomed to from things that he had done in the past. And, you know, it's just the continued progression for Pulis moving up the coaching ranks. And that's nothing against St. Louis FC. It's just the fact that he's gotten an opportunity starting at one level and he's taking the necessary steps to push himself personally up the totem pole. Now, whether or not he ever jumps to an MLS team or jumps back over to England or wherever it may be, he's doing enough to at least put himself in those talking points.
Came to Orlando, played for Orlando in USL Championship. Took over Orlando City B when they were in the championship. Now Orlando City B is in USL League One. Blackwood chasing Loro off his line. And that's a high boot there from Zayats.
Another one of the Georgetown boys on this squad that had the opportunity to play with Lemma in the midfield. You can just see just studs up the entire way as Oscar Umar trying to get a touch on it, flick it the other direction, grabs the right toe extension of that right boot of his.
You mentioned Georgetown boys. I think Georgetown would say, hey, some of those Red Bull Academy boys. There have been some teams that have taken advantage of the academy system, developing better players than ever before. Steered down and a chance to serve. Blackwood, the striker, making the run.
Though the USL Championship in its entirety doesn't have to worry about all this. Some of these teams that have affiliations with their MLS squads will definitely keep an eye on the territorial boundaries that are to change in the near future.
Searching ball again for Blackwood. USL subreddit had an interesting post, you know, with Sacramento and San Jose. Whose territory is Reno? That's I need to spend more time with maps. I'm no cartographer. Sporting Kansas City had a pretty big swath of land over the years. Seattle had Hawaii, believe it or not. Is it Shannon Hopeo out there?
Hopiao.
Hopiao?
Yeah.
That's a name that's developed with time.
It's gone every which way, and even now, though I know it's sitting on my board in bold italics, it's second guessing my mind.
Settled by St. Louis. It's a bit behind Hilton. Camden Fayewo. Camden Fayewo continuing against Scarlett. Skies this up where Loba comes off and grabs it. And the pressure arrives from Red Bull 2. St. Louis able to backstop it at midfield. Uh-oh, Greg took it away. Lines it up for Blackwood. He's in scintillating goal-scoring form, and Blackwood with the extension of the leg commits the foul, and Red Bull 2 wants to play. In doing so, give it back to Boehner. Sits up for Kavita. That's a well-placed header. Red Bulls have a change waiting. Luba goes down. Anthony Pulis is as animated as ever.
Definitely some interesting words being thrown around on the sideline. Let's see what Kadeem Diggers has something to talk about. There's no foul there. He's got a point. No foul whatsoever on Kadeem Diggers. Well done by Janos. If anything, loses his footing and the ball goes out. A little bit of pressure, but that's about it. And
trouble may be brewing here. Lemma, with that iffy clearance. That's a bit better. Cicerone on the turn. He's had a very nice game. Here comes the change for New York.
And this is an interesting move by John Wolyniak. Not disagreeing with it by any means, as Kofi coming off. He's been great. Honestly, he's done a good job in the middle of the field. He's had his hands full, but been able to hold serve for his team for sure. As we mentioned, Zayat's just not necessarily being able to replicate the output by the man from Ivory Coast. And with Ben Mines coming in, you just wonder, is he going to pull Lemma a bit deeper here, or is he going to allow Zayat to sit in?
Here comes St. Louis into the penalty area. Gregg giving chase.
You also have the ability to drop both of those boys side by side and drop into a 4-2-3-1. It is a shape that Red Bull 2 have utilized in games past. Actually toyed with some interesting ones. They went into one sitting midfielder. It wasn't necessarily a 4-1-4-1. Again, everything is always evolving, but there is a basis for all of this when it comes forward. And there's a good look as you see Zayat just sitting a little bit further back than he has from before, and hopefully you can get him on the ball a bit more and try and distribute into the boys in the middle of the field. Jared Stroud or Elney will probably drop in here.
Scarlett for Kilwine. Luba. Spins by Dakers. Karam's free. Lemma, a little tap by Mines. Kept in play. Jorgensen for Mines. The cross ricochets free. Appeal for a handball. There was none, and Cicerone blazing a trail back. Blackwood. Ball played with a bit of malaise. Dakers. Boehner on the overlap. Everything about this looks fantastic. It's off the post. Offside regardless. I mean, that was nearly magical front to back.
Watch Kyle Gregg readjust his body again. Slight hesitation from the right side in terms of distribution. The little pause right here by Boehner. Should have hit it first time. I'll tell you what, this is really close. Obviously, it does not end up in the back of the net. There's a much better look. Yep, he is out in front of the runner as this gets played across. And if you hit that first time, not only does he not have to bring it in between his legs, he can hit it with his instep and put it right in that bottom corner.
Hour mark. St. Louis battling to stay in the playoff hunt. They're sitting in ninth. Couple wins go their way, and they'll find themselves into the first round of the playoffs. In the 7-10 or 8-9 game, if they win out, they could find themselves in sixth. I mentioned Anthony Pulis. I'm looking at the standings. Did I get this right? You know, sixth, probably out of the reach. And he goes, really? You think that's out of reach?
He had you holding your breath there for a couple minutes.
I'm like, well, you know, here's sort of how I see some results breaking down. He goes, I'm just pulling your leg. Didn't know he had such a solid sense of humor. Elney. And this hit to the post. Squirts free. Elney was chasing, held by Gomez. Stroud hitting that across his body with venom.
These boys are starting to play a little bit. Elney has come over to the left side. Jared Stroud is the player that has come into the interior just in front of Zayat and Lemma. And you can see space just starting to naturally open up. Quicker ball movement. The fast touches in the tight little places allow you to start to have your way with that back line, and you're going to start to see this tempo up over the next 5-10 minutes, even further from Red Bull 2.
Lost to Kasher, waiting to make his move in for St. Louis. Won't be just yet. Gregg. Cicerone. Tremendous reach, flexibility. The numbers here are all wrong. Blackwood, and this is struck, punched away by Loro. Follow, kick save Loro, and this runs wide. Hilton had that really great opportunity. Cicerone as well. How in the world did this not get in the net?
There are wings assisting every single player on the pitch right now in a red jersey. Look at this save by Evan Loro. Outstretched left hand. Secondary save as he regains his form back on his legs. And at the tail end of this, right at the penalty mark after Kyle Gregg got the secondary look, you felt like Lewis Hilton was going to be the guy to put them out in front by 2. There is some magic in the air left for John Wolyniak and his squad.
Cicerone is coming off. Laurel might think that applause is for him. It's for Cicerone, who had the assist in the 3rd minute. Kasher comes on. He's become a bit of a vagabond of late. I mean, Loro just lived out every goalkeeping drill he's ever done.
And that's just fresh legs from Anthony Pulis trying to find a way to make sure they still have the ability to counterpunch with Red Bull 2 as this game continues to stretch on 1-0. Gonna be difficult to hold on to, especially when a set piece opportunity just outside the top of the 18 is given up.
Zayat gets his feet tangled up. The referee was square in the middle of all that. I think that may have made this a little bit more difficult for all involved.
You hear a shout from their manager on the sideline, but how about everybody else? There's a trailing run. The referee's in the way. Tyler Blackwood getting stuck in. And with the substitution of Kasher coming on, that will give them some fresh legs. Cicerone goes off. Quality shift by him, but a lot of really impressive dead ball strikers in the form of New York Red Bull 2. You can see Jared Stroud sitting there. Lemma. Of course, we saw a beautiful strike by Bezecourt last time out. That was saved by Tomas. Unfortunately, the follow-up by Elney made it 2-0 at the tail end of the game. This could go left-footed the way it's sitting, although you cannot cheat too much here on that far post.
It'll be Stroud. Luba to throw. His brother Yannick also played with him in the States in college and onto the League 2 side. Red Bull U23. All the way down to Loro. Umar. Devin, is it possible we've gotten to hold on for dear life mode?
You can't bunker with 25 minutes to go against this team. That will never play out for you. And they're not willing to do that just yet. Again, the line's pretty impressive right now. You can see the sitting 4 and then about 5 yards of space and then another block just in front. You have to make sure that if you're Blackwood and Kyle Gregg, keep those legs moving. You do have reinforcements on the bench And I promise you, their manager is going to tell them to just keep this going. Make sure that we're not broken down in those areas, because if you get in behind them, now Lewis Hilton or Oscar Umar has to stretch, and then it becomes a domino effect where space just starts to open up one after another. That's when you get playmakers like Stroud and Lemma on the ball, and things start to open up at top of the 18.
Devin, that was a royal you and me and the viewers we. I mean, this thing is about to be a roller coaster, if Red Bull has anything to say about it. Bunkering in against Red Bull is literally the worst thing you can do, right?
Right now, yes, with this much time. The decision-making will still be positive for Red Bull 2. If there's 5 minutes to go, frustration continues to mount. You'll go into desperation mode, especially when you're on the road. You'll see guys start to knock long balls in and just play chase a little bit. They get away from their game plan. I don't mind the look then, but with this amount of time, obviously have to stick to the reason that you've gotten here.
Fans, you can continue to enjoy the USL on ESPN through the 2022 season. USL excited to announce the championship and League One remain with the leader in sports for 3 more years. ESPN Plus will continue to be the home of all things USL, and at least 19 games a year featured on the ESPN family of linear networks, including 9 games on ESPN Deportes. Continue to follow, support, and watch your club on ESPN and ESPN Plus. A relationship that started with the USL Championship final in 2015. Rochester and Galaxy 2, stoppage time, game tying goal, extra time game winner. Lassiter and Canardo Forbes 2 assists in that game. It's just me and my buddy John Harkes who ushered this puppy through the first game on an ESPN network with the league.
A little name drop, my friend.
It's not name drop.
I don't mind it.
I wasn't a first-round pick like you were.
Yeah.
I don't know what league you were a first-round pick. Dakers, this is a long run. Dakers takes the ball away. Here he goes. Dakers once more. Everybody going down. Penalty. St. Louis might be able to seal this up. A second goal would go a long, long way for a team that is so defensively stout.
Interesting that when you look at Red Bull 2 and you talk about their press, they want guys that are positive, but when the second chance doesn't happen, how do they react when it's the third and the fourth, and you have to continuously push yourself? That's what goes on, except it's from St. Louis. Dakers gives the balls away. You have the challenge by Cashier. It's one after another, continuously trying to give yourself an opportunity. There is a little touch here. I am not sure this is enough to point to the spot. The outstretched leg, there's not a lot of momentum against Cashier. Regardless, the referee is gonna go in the form of Sam Fink. Believe it or not, this center back, one of their leading goal scorers.
6 goals this year. He's the man up on set pieces with his big 6'2" frame. He was the Open Cup fan poll lower division player of the tournament. Incredible year for Sam Fink. Looking to give St. Louis a 2-goal lead. Sam Fink's star continues to rise. The Luligan at heart. 2-0 to St. Louis.
This game continues on in this manner. St. Louis FC will most assuredly earn themselves 3 points. We got 20 minutes to go, but their game plan so far has been executed almost to a T. Argue what you will about whether or not this ends up at the spot. You still got to step up and bury it. 20 minutes to go in a match with a Goliath on the other side of the field, one of which represents the form of Evan Lauro, a keeper who is always up to the task put in front of him. Sam Fink sends him back into the right, and St. Louis out in front by 2.
Sam Fink is just having some kind of year. They talk about his consistency. Talk about a guy who's only scored 4 goals in the last 2 years. He's got 7 now this year. Evan Lauro was shown a yellow card in the aftermath of that goal. Fink gets a little extra from this crowd when he's the one who scores.
Yellow card caution has been issued by the referee.
Sam Fink at this point is the face of the franchise. You don't always say that about center backs. Played 4 years at Wake Forest, came to St. Louis FC, took a 1-year detour to Oklahoma City, played for Jimmy Nielsen. It has been back now for 2 years running. Blackwood gets his feet swept out. It's Kilwine this time.
You'll start to see all of these walks to the ball and set piece opportunities take a bit longer than you would previously in this match. Nice little cushion now for the home squad, and they just execute down the stretch. It seems like they struggled forever to get back on this beautiful run of form after the Open Cup. They struggled during it and felt like maybe, okay, let's hit the reset button, get back to what we were so good at earlier on this season, but not able to do so. And again, set pieces. There's Yield faithful, Ken Wakavita and Sam Fink sitting right around the penalty mark. Just watch the 2 big bodies.
Free kick for St. Louis, knotted down. Lauro didn't get his fingertips to it. It's up over the crossbar. Let's take a look at that previous foul. This came in the 69th minute. Nice view here.
Again, it's all about continuing to go forth. Kadeem Dakers Cashier coming on the backside. That's it. That's a much better look. That's the best angle we've seen. From the other direction, it didn't look like enough was done by Jordan Scarlett to bring the player down and point to the penalty mark. That is a much better representation of the foul that occurred. He definitely catches him on the top of the boot.
A tough moment for Scarlett. This is his 24th appearance of the year, all his starts, and Roy Boateng comes on, the first-round pick of New York Red Bulls in the 2019 MLS Super Draft, and he has waited a long time to hear his name.
Picked up a nasty hip injury early on this season, which has prohibited him from participating in any of the games for the organization, yet alone for Red Bull 2 at the USL Championship level. They think he has the talent level, taking in to usher this team in a new direction going forward, but of course had to nurse him back to health, and what an awesome opportunity. Last week was actually the first time he had even made it into the 18.
Yeah.
Now getting a chance to come off the bench, showcase himself with just over 15 minutes to go.
63 in red. It's his first appearance out of UC Davis, where he's twice the Big West Defensive Player of the Year. Foul against Red Bull. Another yellow card coming out. Well, welcome to the pros. Boateng instantly into the yellow card. I don't know if that's a record, but it'd be real hard to beat it.
The other thing to think about for Jordan Scarlett is he was sitting on 7 yellow cards. You reach lucky number 8, you hit the yellow card accumulation, have another game suspension, which he already acquired earlier this season.
Well, an injury here after the foul by Boateng, who goes into the book. He came on for Scarlett a moment ago, with Nealis unavailable tonight. Boateng, 8 years old when he moved to the United States. Team actually traded up to get him. First month in the United States, it's been said he only ate French fries. It's the only food he liked. But ultimately, with time, kind of grew up a big fan of Thierry Henry, drafted by the franchise that Henry finished his career with. And Boateng in Red Bull colors for the first time. A long time coming. Native of Accra, Ghana.
Pulis sticking with his idea of what he wants this to look like. Sam Fink up top again.
And it's knocked through, and it would have taken a little toe poke to get it by Loro. Didn't come there. And Loro wants to blast this upfield as quick as he can. Devin, I don't think this is a shocking result if it holds. I don't think anyone should be shocked by it.
It's not a shocking result. Some of it is just the application by Red Bull 2 or lack thereof. Again, I go back to the argument in the middle of the field where Zayat's on the ball right now, and I like the changes that came forth from their manager, and you started to see them pick it up a little bit now. The penalty took all of the wind out of the sails on that one. Whether you agree with it or not, upon closer review, you can see that it definitely was a penalty from the alternate angle we've been shown now. But I want these guys on the ball, two talented playmakers in the middle of the field that just haven't had a boatload of opportunity. And it's not just their inability to get on the ball or at least find them in transition. You bring Jared Stroud in, you start to get some more movement going forward. Guys like Jorgensen, Sebastian Elney, so much talent up top, and they just haven't been able to get out in front, run numbers at that back line when they've started to move their number higher. How do you find a way with 14 minutes to go to get them on the ball a bit more?
Blackwood coming off. Cicerone came off moments ago. Here's their goal in the 3rd minute.
He can do no wrong at this point in time within St. Louis. 4 goals, 4 games, 3 in the past 2. Brilliant performance on the road at Birmingham, and look, he's got better skills in that nature than I do. We'll have to talk about the fashion in terms of his shorts. But his taekwondo, karate, I don't know, maybe even a little mixed martial arts in there. Nothing that I'm capable of course.
Nope. Dev as a center back wasn't the I'm going to drop kick you kind of guy. He was the I'm going to punch you in the face kind of guy.
I'll drop you and then I will kick you, not drop kick. You can't combine the two. That's giving me credit for too much athleticism.
It's Paris G who came on. That's as obvious defensive sub as you can make. Blackwood for G. And at this point, all attention turned the injured Preston Kilwine. As the clock slowly runs on this Wednesday night in Fenton, Missouri. Good crowd tonight. Obviously, our congratulations to the ownership group related to St. Louis FC and those who are coming in for MLS for the Lou. There are great big things happening in St. Louis. It's been such a wonderful city. The USL Championship since they came into the league. Finally some success, Devin. And you talk with Anthony Pulis and he said, all right, the goal now is to just make the playoffs. Maybe early it was, let's get in the top 6, but ultimately they thought last year, let's get in for the first time, and year 2 under him, it's let's do it again.
Interestingly enough, he also went further to say that when you talked about points and playoff seeding and how he wanted this to play out, he actually, though he didn't die away from that, he said 4 wins. 4 wins matches our win total of 2018. That's really important to me. I'd like to hit that number. That will make me happy, and I think the 12 points will help us get in. Anything past that is a bonus.
And ultimately, you would say the East has never been stronger. Credit to the Red Bulls for being top of the East at this stage of the season, although they face Murderers Row down the stretch. Murderers Row that would make the Yankees lineups of years past shudder. Bounding ball kept in play, cleared by Kavita. And a change coming for Red Bulls 2. John Tolkien, come on. He actually first appeared in a game where his team was down 2-0 against Bethlehem. This ain't Bethlehem. However, they did end up with a 4-3 win against the Steel.
He can play. Very technical player in the middle of the field that you can really utilize in a multitude of ways. They've used him at outside back, sitting in that 6th spot, and he's not afraid to push the envelope and step up into space and have a go.
Luba. You could say the same about him. He'll send it backward. 10 minutes to go. Mines, and there is no runner.
Let's just see what the vision for Tolkien can add to this movement going forward. Again, it hasn't been the best night for Red Bull 2, getting all the attacking pieces on the same page. Though they have shown us in matches past that they're capable of. We said coming in how the defensive unit has been much better. Offensively, they still managed to put together a nice little season. 66 in the back of the net so far. 21 of those, by the way, have come in the final 20 minutes. So a third of their goals coming down the stretch, and we alluded to it earlier, that beautiful comeback victory, 3-1 against Bethlehem Steel early on this season, all three of which came in the final 15 minutes, so a lot of work to be done by the home squad still.
This will be a corner. That is outstanding pressure applied by St. Louis in the waning moments of this game. Few updates from around the league. Ottawa beats Tampa Bay, as mentioned earlier. Wall fall penalty. Atlanta United 2 beats Charleston 3-1, and it may be a death knell for Charleston. They still have plenty of time to make it up, but I mean, that's one where you had to think they thought they were going to get those points. Can't get the job done. Away to Atlanta, Gwinnett County. Corner lifted. This has not been a night for the set piece brigade. Will be a throw for St. Louis FC. Bethlehem clobbering Loudoun 5-2 in Philadelphia. And later on tonight, interesting match, Fresno at home against Rio Grande Valley as they tussle with Reno for the number 2 spot in the West. All those games airing on ESPN Plus, live and archive. That'll get out. Well, you have a moment, fans. The USL unveiled its elite youth platform, USL Academy. It allows clubs at all levels across the USL to develop its local youth and compete at the highest level across the United States, including the USL Academy Cup. For more information, uslsoccer.com/academy. As we see St. Louis FC have such a great relationship with St. Louis Scott Gallagher, and Red Bulls 2, the conduit to the pipeline, the Red Bulls Academy. Squared out for Zayats, falls in front, and Boehner launches away. And flicked in front for Jorgensen, easy for Gomez. Settled by Dakers, who's been such a bright light this year for St. Louis. On what amounts to a school night, I imagine, in St. Louis.
Just St. Louis? It's past my bedtime. We've discussed this. Got to go to bed early. Got to wake up early. Always enjoyed that conversation with our producer Ava Ponte. Says, I just don't understand. How do you go to bed so early in the middle of the week? It's a schedule, my friend. Got to stick to it. That and I really don't have enough of a life outside of this and just watch video all the time.
Lobbed right at Loro. Well, St. Louis looking as dangerous as anybody with the USL Championship playoffs. About a month away from commencing. Dev, at the outset, you talked about the Red Bulls press against how St. Louis could ultimately defeat it. Do you feel that was the way that this game was won? Did it take a twist you didn't anticipate? as Elney goes down, and it's lashed across. It's going to be ultimately a goal kick.
Wasn't necessarily their ability to sit and counteract the press. It was more so the lack of movement you saw out of the midfield for Red Bull 2. That was something coming in that I mentioned to you, how this team in the last game, St. Louis FC, they got exploited out on the wings. Now, how did that happen? Quick movement, going the other direction, of course, but that all starts from somewhere. It starts from the back line, and then the ability to go from point A to B to C. C is the finished product with the front three, but B was the glue that held it all together. And what they would do is they would start from the interior and push numbers outside. Cashier was part of that. Paris G we talked about, and Colin Fernandez had a bit of difficulty as well, where they kept starting inside and then running to the exterior. That wasn't the case tonight. The surprise to me was the lack of movement in the middle of the field, so that they weren't going direct. They weren't going from the back line up to the front three. They were still trying to go through the middle, and a lot of it, again, for the opening 60, 65 minutes, was all down the right-hand side. They didn't go to the left at all, and to give you an idea of, at home, how to break that down a bit further, we have the luxury of a program that breaks down the final three.
Ball lifted up, comes down kindly. Loro takes that off the kneecaps.
It showcases, outside of the eye test, percentages of where the offense is going, more specifically right, center, and left. And again, up until the 60-minute mark, about 68% of Red Bull 2's offense was going down this right-hand flank. That's not usually a good look. That makes it easier on St. Louis FC.
Two injured Red Bulls players squared across. G overrun. St. Louis looks for their exclamation point.
Even now, down the left-hand side, Janos gets the ball, plays it into Elney, and then you have to wait for everybody else to come up with you. You've reached the point in time, you're down 2-0. You've got to leave your back four to do their job and find a way to knock that long distribution ball coming out of the back and keep 3-4 guys sitting up high.
Hit that like a cue ball, came right back out for Red Bull 2. They look to get a goal here. If they do, all of a sudden they're right back in this thing. Good step over. Camden Fawo totally out of sorts. And Stroud wins a corner. Red Bulls 2 running out of time here to make something of this. Stroud on the turn. Deflects over. Flicked away from Hilton. Calvert further. Here goes Dakers. Umar. And there it is. Is this the moment? G. Oh, golly.
Kadeem Dakers wants this ball so bad. I don't blame him. When you're this far into a game, even when you come on as a substitute, you have to keep your mind clear. You do all the dirty work. Just lay this off. Let your compatriot to your left shoulder finish things off. Instead, selfish play, I get it. You want to put your name in lights as well, but that would have been the dagger that broke the backbone.
Luba. Is this going to be 4 shutouts in 5 games for this St. Louis defense? For a while was much maligned, coming out of the staggering amount of games in the Open Cup. 5 straight wins. 5 minutes of stoppage time should tell us one way or the other. Stroud lays it off. Ball for Jorgensen. Deflected. Corner, Red Bull. 5 added minutes. Separates St. Louis from massive points in the playoff race. Stroud. Luba. off of Daker's instep. Rushed aside by Dakers. Mines facing up. Jorgensen lost sight of it for a moment. And a Red Bull foul, and Jorgensen's arms outstretched. His disappointment tonight certainly be justified. And St. Louis, Devin, suddenly brimming with confidence. Team that had lost its way ultimately had to decide, I think maybe most significantly, play with no fear. Sort of what they've talked about over the last few months.
Retool a couple things, maybe not as much second guessing by the manager. Anthony Pulis admitted that could have been too hard on the environment that he created, needed to give the boys a bit more freedom. That, you know, sometimes just trust the process that you've instilled in everybody. They'd given you no reason early on to second guess some of the actions that were put forth. So when it wasn't going positively for you, just stay the course. Maybe pull the trigger on some substitutions a bit early too many times, and you know, could they find a way to get back to what they were so good in every application earlier on the season? Wanted to simplify it. They've been able to do that and more. And what's more impressive to me is who they've done it against. Again, we talked about the beautiful start this season, but it's really the last 5 matches against teams like Nashville and Ottawa, and getting results when it mattered against teams that were sitting above you. How could you climb the standings, especially against teams that were pretty much at top form when you were taking them on? Ottawa Fury, a team that Nikola Popovic had done quite well for themselves. They've since hit a slide. Nashville, the same thing, although they had a late game winner last night.
Did they?
Yeah, that was impressive, right? And you know, of course, the one on the road against Birmingham Legion, that was a big one for me, because throughout everything, they still only managed to drop 1 game, and that was early on this season to Birmingham Legion at home. What could you do when things weren't going right for you? Okay, you rattle off 2 in a row, but now you got to go back on the road. A thing that they experienced really harsh throughout the summer months in that Open Cup run. But they have really stuck to their guns down the stretch, now put themselves in prime position to continue moving up the Eastern Conference table and, you know, maybe play the what-if game. Can they get themselves into that 6th spot? There are games to be had.
A little over a minute to go. Jorgensen away from him by the inimitable Sam Fink. Final minute. And it looks like St. Louis has this thing signed, sealed, delivered. Their biggest regular season win of the year as it stands. Loro. That's by Kavita. You know, we haven't talked about Fanuel Kavita. Anthony Pulis laid it down. He goes, I don't know that he's going to win it. I think he needs to be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year in this league. And I have not heard one soul mention his name in that conversation yet. In part because everyone thinks St. Louis and they think Sam Fink. Probably not enough time to totally dig into it.
He also backed up and said, I can't blame them for that thought process either with Sam Fink, but it is something that we're in the 95th minute, and the only conversation we've had about Fanuel Kavita is just now or on a set-piece opportunity in the offensive end.
Anthony Pulis and St. Louis FC have made it 5 wins in a row. They vanquished the #1 team in the East. They're that much closer to playoff position. 2-0 over New York Red Bulls 2 on Wednesday Night Soccer.
Let's take that stat right there further. First 5-match win streak. You go back to July 10th. This team loses to Atlanta United 2 in the quarterfinal of the Open Cup. What was the response going to be? They go 1-3, fall flat on their face, and okay, they're not going to make the playoffs. Since then, 9 matches. They've gone 5-2-2. Oh, by the way, that 5-game win streak, 5 consecutive victories. That is a club record. How do you like me now?
The Luligans, they like it a lot. Blackwood again, Fink again, St. Louis again. Highlights and stats coming up.
September 28th, as the club hosts Atlanta United 2. Kickoff December.
Well, the fans are waiting to greet their conquering heroes. 2-0 St. Louis over Red Bulls 2. Giant win for St. Louis. As with Devin Kerr, Mike Watts, we take a look at the full-time highlights. And for St. Louis, when the sun was still high in the air, 3rd minute of play, Cicerone to Blackwood.
This isn't rocket science on how to necessarily beat the press, but it is all about application. Anthony Pulis admitted that in order for them to be successful, they were just going to follow suit about what they had done before. It felt like they lacked it in the last meeting earlier on this season, but they did quite well for themselves tonight. Started with that opening goal, and then how about just the continued push forth, the breakdown in the middle of the field, nice movement outside, and you've seen that from them before, but it's that 2- and 3-man quick press that enabled them to strike it outside and then find Blackwood in the trailing run on the back post. Of course, individual brilliance by the outstretched leg of Tyler Blackwood. He's now got 4 goals in 4 games, 3 in the last 2. How about the goalkeeping position? Tomas Gomez, something that earlier on this season, Jake Fenlison was the one who had taken over, and during the Open Cup run, he actually, coming back from injury, did well for himself. Good job by the goalkeeper to remain constant back there tonight. Couple chances down the stretch for the home squad that could have easily put it away, but Lady Luck shine bright. Great job by Evan Lohr. Watch the outstretched arm as this thing gets whipped in. Well done. Quick little deflection off of it. Regains his composure. Steps up, make a secondary save, and then a third one with Lewis Hilton just trailing. And then the penalty. Is it a phantom call? Right there you thought it was, but when you see the other angle, there is an outstretched boot. Now you're going to get a good look at it. Watch the trailing foot. Cashier's going to come back through here. The right foot steps right on Master Cashier, the substitute who had come in. Point to the spot. In steps Lewis. Nope. That's Sam Fink. Of course, old reliable from the spot. Your center back, the man who loves chocolate milk. He's going to get plenty of it tonight after that kind of performance next to Fanuel Kavita to push out this high-flying offense of Red Bull 2.
When's the last time you saw a team that led the conference in scoring by 16 coming into a game get 1 shot on target?
This was really bad. And there was actually a nice article that came out by John Arlia from the league and the amount of chances that St. Louis FC had not allowed their opponents. Go check it out on USLChampionship.com. Check out news. There's a bunch of other fun stuff there. They executed perfectly. Anthony Pulis had his boys ready for this game from start to finish. At no point in time were you overly concerned about what they were able to do defensively, and they showed you some really nice looks going forward. Everybody else in the Eastern Conference has to be put on notice.
Well, here's what the standings look like now. The top 4 have officially clinched playoff position based on other results that have occurred tonight. Red Bulls and Indy were initially in, now Nashville and Tampa Bay know they're in. Ottawa wins tonight, St. Louis keeps pace. They still have a chance to get that home game in the first round. They still have a chance to get into sixth.
To your point early on as well, Charleston Battery, they lose. They are within 1 point of the Birmingham Legion, so the cream starting to rise to the crop. In terms of the bottom part of the Eastern Conference, St. Louis separating themselves a little bit. Birmingham Legion in that final 10 spot. Charleston Battery just 1 point behind.
And coming up tonight on ESPN Plus, the action continues. We go to the Western Conference. Fresno Football Club currently in second, taking on RGVFC from Chuck Chansey Park in downtown Fresno. It kicks off in less than 30 minutes time, so just go ahead and flip that channel, so to speak. Wow, St. Louis, they are for real. 5 straight wins, 15 straight points when their backs were up against the wall. For our wonderful Vista World Link team, producer Ava Ponte, director Gage Tillotson, Eric Falero, Annette Reyes, and our crew in St. Louis, Devin Kerr alongside Mike Watsang. Thanks for watching. Red Bulls 2 still top the East, but St. Louis tops them tonight. Finishes 2-0 on Wednesday Night Soccer.
This copyrighted telecast of the United Soccer League Championship cannot be retransmitted, rebroadcast, or reproduced without the expressed written consent of the United Soccer League Championship.